Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I'm a little out of breath. I live in a 3-story townhouse, and of course everything I need is always on a different floor from where I am. So I was getting ready to go live with you guys because as soon as I get done with this, I'm leaving to go meet with a potential client, and I'm like hunting around for my lipstick. It's of course on like a totally different floor, and I'm running up and down the stairs and trying to get this live started on time. So take a second and catch my breath while everybody gets on. If you are here, say hello. I love to see who's here and to know who I'm talking to. And I know some of you guys will watch this later on the replay. I had kind of short notice this morning. I just realized I was going to be all dressed up with my hair and makeup done and was going to have a few minutes before I had to leave to go to this meeting. So hello, Adrian. I see you. So we'll wait just a minute to see who else joins us here. And like I said, I'm sure some of you will end up watching this on the replay. I know it was kind of short notice this morning, but I am leaving the house today here shortly and won't be back until late tonight. So this was like my only real chance to jump on and do a live today. And it's what I'm doing today that really inspired me to do this live. Adrian says she loves my gator lamp. Yes, actually, funny story. That is my second gator lamp like that. So I got that from my grandfather when I graduated law school from Florida, and I had it in my office when I was a corporate attorney. That was like one of the few fun things in my boring law office. And I had to move offices inside our firm, and the movers broke my lamp. It was really tragic because it was the one personal item I had in my office, and they broke it. But luckily they were able to find another one and bought me a new one. And my husband is an Auburn grad, so my Florida stuff gets relegated to my home office here where he doesn't have to see it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and anybody who jumps on can hopefully go back and watch the replay from the beginning. But what I want to talk about is how to get paying clients out of an audience at a speaking engagement. That's one of the top questions I get from people who want to do speaking, is whether or not it's actually going to help their business grow, and how do you get people from the audience to end up being paying clients. And it's really simple. It's simple in terms of the concept, a little harder to execute, I guess, but it's all about being in front of the right audience to begin with, okay? Now, I get to do some pretty cool speaking gigs. You guys probably saw me talk about the fact that I got to go speak to the Miami Dolphins a couple of months ago. I mean, that was an amazing experience. I'm so glad I did it. I would do it all over again. It paid well. It was fun. It was something I was able to post on social media that people paid attention to. So from that respect, it was worth it. But none of those Dolphins players are going to become clients of mine. They have, agents. They have financial managers. There are people within the team who handle publicity and public relations type stuff for them. I mean, it would be a stretch for me to think that I was going to get a client out there. Now, maybe eventually some of them have foundations and they have their own businesses on the side. So, it's not completely outside of the realm of possibility. Hi, Jessica. I saw that you joined last week. You guys, I have to, a little aside here. I drove to Tampa, Florida last week, which is 4 hours away from where I live, because I had the opportunity to meet Adrian Dorson and Lacey Craig, both of whom I had followed on Facebook for a long time, and Jessica Ransdell, who's now on live with us, was there as well. I got to meet several amazing women at that brunch, and I'm so glad I made the drive down there. And I'm glad Jessica's on here because I know Jessica does a lot of public speaking as well, and I'm curious to see if her experiences have been sort of the same as mine. But for those of you who are looking for some serious public speaking help, some combination of Jessica and I can definitely help you. I think we do different things, so depending on who you are and what you're trying to do. Okay. So back to my story, okay? So I do a lot of speaking engagements that pay well, that I enjoy and have fun doing, that put me in front of really interesting crowds. I do a lot in sports because of my background as a sports journalist. And the thing about those speaking engagements is they don't really grow my business anymore. I guess they grow my business from the perspective that I make good revenue from those speaking engagements, and that probably accounts for something like a quarter of my revenue every year is from speaking fees. So from that perspective, they grow my business. But in terms of growing my publicity business, they don't do a lot for that, with the exception of my ability to share that I'm doing those speaking engagements and talk to people about becoming a public speaker and making money from public speaking. I mean, it's not that they have no value at all, but I'm generally not in front of an audience where the people in the audience are going to become paying clients of mine, okay? So it's a little more indirect how those speaking engagements help my business. But, okay, I started recently really thinking about what type of speaking engagements could I do where I was going to up the odds that people in the audience would become paying clients. And I realized that I was going to need to pitch myself for places where my ideal client hangs out. So my ideal client is an entrepreneur who's not brand new, has a business, I would say at least a year. I've had some people under a year, so that's not a hard rule, but they have a business and they've sort of plateaued with how far they can get. And sometimes that's for a number of reasons, and you need a number of other coaches to help you with other aspects of your business. But what I can do is establish you as an expert in your niche and then help you become more visible for that expertise, whether that's through public speaking, it's on social media, it's blogging, guest blogging, and media appearances especially. That's what a lot of folks come to me for. So I started thinking, how can I get in front of groups like that? And I thought, I don't even care if the speaking engagement pays. Okay, this doesn't need to be that part of my business. This needs to put me in front of my ideal client. Where can I go where I'm assured my ideal client is going to be in the audience? And so I literally went on Google. I live just outside of Jacksonville, Florida. I went on Google and I searched Jacksonville entrepreneur groups. That's it, okay? And the first thing that came up was Jacksonville community of entrepreneurs. Sorry guys, I'm kind of watching everybody who's joining. So the first thing that came up was Jacksonville Community of Entrepreneurs. And I did a little research and found out that they were born out of a great thing we have here called One Spark, which is a crowd-funded festival where entrepreneurs and innovators can come, they get a booth, and they tell people about their idea. Sometimes it's an app, sometimes it's a service, sometimes it's a product. And the crowd, the people who attend the festival, can vote to fund those businesses. It's a really neat thing. It's been around for a few years now. And this Jacksonville community of entrepreneurs grew out of that. Those people decided they didn't want to just wait for the festival to roll around once a year. They wanted to be able to interact with each other all year long. Okay, so I thought this is a perfect group for me to get in front of. And I sent an email, and they looked like they were already full for their summer speaker series, but I just introduced myself, said who I was, you know, the fact that I work with entrepreneurs like those that are in their group, my background as a publicist, the things I could do to help their members. And I asked them to keep me in mind for future speaking engagements, thinking maybe next summer during their speaker series, I would be able to speak to them. And it was just the right timing, and this is why you got to send the email. Even if you think that they're full and you can't get in, you send the email anyway, because they emailed me back within 2 hours and said that they had a speaker cancel for their June 20th date, and did I want it? And I said, heck yeah, I want it. At that point, it was like 2 weeks away from the speaking engagement, but I do enough speaking, I'm comfortable kind of going last minute like that, no big deal. And it ended up being this really neat, what they called fireside chat. It's like 100 degrees here, so there was not an actual fire, but they called it a fireside chat. And I was interviewed by someone who I talked to on the phone beforehand, but one of the directors of the group sat down and interviewed me, and we just had this nice little like back and forth conversation about my career and how I went from corporate attorney to being a sports journalist to now being a publicist. And I shared a lot of actionable advice for the people in the crowd. So the key was I put myself in front of a crowd full of people I knew were my ideal client. Now, there were only like 25 to 30 people there, and one was already a current client of mine who I invited. One was my husband. So let's just say, to be conservative, there were 25 entrepreneurs in the crowd. That is an incredibly small audience for me. I speak in front of hundreds, I speak in front of thousands, but guess what? It doesn't matter if all 25 of those people are my ideal client, and they were, because they all stayed and talked to me afterwards, and I know now what they do, and I can say with complete confidence, every single person in that crowd was my ideal client. So I would much rather be in front of 25 people who are my ideal client, where I'm not even getting paid for the speaking gig, than 3,000 people who aren't my ideal client. Or maybe out of 3,000, there's 6 or something in the crowd. A lot of these big speaking engagements I do are great and I love them, but they're not necessarily full of my ideal clients. So step number 1 to getting clients out of a speaking gig is getting yourself in front of the right people to begin with, and do what I did. Just get on Google and search for your ideal client in your local area. Jessica says, "Hey, freaking men." Now, Jessica's a public speaker too, okay? You've got to put yourself in front of the right people, okay? So I got in front of people, I knew were my ideal client, and then I made sure that my speaking engagement allowed me to showcase actionable advice for the entrepreneurs that were there. So when I spoke with the guy who was going to interview me, he had me send him a list of questions that I wanted him to ask me. So I got to control the interview a little bit. And when he and I talked on the phone, I really stressed that it was important to me to share actionable advice for these entrepreneurs. And obviously, he thought that was great too, because that's what they want to do for their members, is provide them advice that they can leave and actually implement into their businesses. And it was awesome. We got so many questions when it was over. Almost every single person stayed afterwards to talk to me. I ended up there for almost 2 hours. After the event ended, they were literally trying to lock the doors and were like kicking us out when I finally got out of there. And within 24 hours, I got emails from 8 different people who were in the audience who asked to meet with me this week, okay? This was last Monday that I did this, so it's been like a week and a day now. 8 people. I had a 9th person who found me on LinkedIn and wanted to introduce me to someone else on LinkedIn who also lives here in the area but didn't make the speaking engagement. I have since been introduced to 2 other people through those folks that emailed me. I have 3 meetings today in person with people who were at my speaking engagement and want to talk to me about my services. I have another one Thursday and another one Friday. So I have 5 business meetings this week with local entrepreneurs who want to talk to me about my services. And here's the thing, I don't even try to go after local business normally. I would say 95% of all the clients I've worked with, I've found online, predominantly through Facebook groups, to be perfectly honest. A lot of you who are on here watching right now are people I met in Facebook groups and that I interact with in Facebook groups. This is my primary source of business. I get a few people here and there from LinkedIn and Twitter. Those are things I've always been active on as a sports journalist. So sometimes I have sports related entrepreneurs who come to me through those channels. But I have 2 local clients, one of whom I met in a Facebook group. So, it's not even like she met me because I was local. It just so happens she doesn't live too far from me. And then I have 1 truly local client who I was introduced by someone here in the community. If you guys have seen me post about my doctor client who has the plant-based skincare line, she is here in town. But I don't consider myself, my primary marketing strategies do not involve trying to get clients here locally. Honestly, I live on an island. I'm outside of Jacksonville. I live on Amelia Island. It's like 12 miles long by 2 miles wide. I work from home, so I'm bad about not leaving the island. I've got my husband here. My best friend lives a block from me, so I can be bad about like being inside my Amelia Island bubble. But because I kind of forced myself out of the bubble and I found this entrepreneur group in Jacksonville, which is like just under an hour drive for me, I've got 5 meetings this week with potential clients here locally. And it's awesome because I have connections with media here locally because I happen to live here. My husband is in radio here in town. I do have the 1 local client who does a lot of media. So, I can definitely help local clients quite a bit. But that's not even my primary marketing strategy, or at least it hasn't been. It's going to be now. I've got another speaking engagement next month with the Jacksonville Women's Leadership Forum, which will put me in front of executive level women. Now, this is a little different in that those women are largely still in corporate America. Most of my clients are individuals who are entrepreneurs, but I have in the past worked with attorneys because of my background as an attorney. And so it's not outside of my sort of service base to work with a professional services firm and help their employees, their executives, become thought leaders in their space and get that media attention and that sort of thing. So I don't think that that's as perfect of a group as this group last week was in terms of putting myself in front of people who could become paying clients. But it's a pretty good bet. I've been involved with them before. I spoke at their annual conference last year and I've been to a couple of their events and think it's a great group. And so that's another speaking engagement that I'll go to do. But to sort of sum this up, my advice for you would be, to find where your ideal client is close to you. You know, it's one thing to find your ideal client online, but especially if you live near a big city, look to see what sort of groups or even what conferences are coming to town, and look at things you can drive to. Like I was telling you, I drove last week to Tampa. I had a meeting with a potential client there. I was able to meet with a group of entrepreneurs who I hope I can collaborate with in the future. So be willing to drive a few hours. It's not that big of a deal. I know we're all busy and a lot of you are married and have children and have other obligations, but that FaceTime with people is huge. And so if you can get in front of your ideal client and do what I did, just use Google to find them. I mean, that's all I did. I Googled Jacksonville Entrepreneur Group and several came up. This one looked the most promising, but I will probably now contact the others. But that is the number one key. When I talk to people who are doing public speaking and they tell me that they're not getting clients out of their speaking engagement, the problem they all have is that they're not in front of the right audience, okay? A lot of people talk about wanting to do TED Talks. Okay, TED Talks are great. It sounds good. There's a lot of marketing you can do around that. I'm not saying not to do them. Find out who actually attends those TED Talks. You know, I have looked at the TED Talk in my area to see the types of people who attend it. They're not my ideal client. So it doesn't make any sense for me to speak at that event. So while speaking at a TED Talk is kind of the cool in thing to do right now, and maybe the TED group that's near you has the perfect audience for you, do that research though. Find out who's going to those events. If they put the event on Facebook, see who has registered to attend, try to click on their profile, see where they work. You know, it takes a little bit of work to figure out where your ideal audience is and whether or not you're getting in front of them. But that is the number one mistake people are making when they come to me. They say, I never get clients for my speaking gig. And I say, well, where are you speaking? And when we really dig in, they're not speaking in front of their ideal client, okay? So that's number one. And then when you do the speech, you've got to give actionable advice. Give concrete things people can walk away with after your speech and implement, okay? And that might sound scary that you're gonna give them advice and they're gonna go implement it on their own, but your ideal client is someone who wants the help, who wants the assistance. You know, for me, it's someone who's so busy that yes, they could figure out how to do it on their own perhaps, but they don't want to be bothered. They know there are better uses of their time within their business. And so they're going to hire me to do it for them. Okay. So you want to give people that actionable advice that they can walk away with and be willing to share parts of your story. There were so many people who came up to me afterwards and had connected with different parts of my story. Either the fact that I used to be a corporate attorney and I had left, you know, so maybe they were someone who was in corporate America and had left. Or had other pieces of their journey that matched mine. So be willing to share your journey, give those actionable advice, those actionable tips, get in front of the right audience, and the magic will happen. I promise you. If you guys have questions, I will stick around for a couple of minutes and answer questions. And then I am dashing out the door for one of my 3 meetings today with potential clients. I am so excited. I'm actually pretty close to full for July. So having 5 meetings with potential clients this week it is a little nerve-wracking because I want to land all of them, but I will have to definitely do some more delegating if that happens. And Jessica says we're on the same wavelength. I'm excited because Jessica, I have heard awesome things about you and what an amazing public speaker you are and the amazing work you do with women, getting them ready to share their story and be public speakers. So I know that we can make some magic happen together. Does anybody have any questions before I sign off? If you watch the replay or I sign off before you get your question answered, I will come back into the comments later today between my meetings and answer questions. Happy to help everybody. Thank you, Adrian. Thanks for coming to watch. I appreciate it. So exciting. See, you go meet women like this in person and then they show up to support you when you do things like Facebook Live. That is why you get out of your house. I know some of you are introverts. I'm not. That piece is not my problem. It's just that I am like remote here on my little island. But get out of your house and meet people in person, both clients and other entrepreneurs who can offer you that support that you need. Adrian says, no question, but I love hearing this and need to work on this side of my business more. Definitely. Between now that you know Jessica and I, there's no excuse for you not to work on this now. So we will be watching you. Okay, Adrian? Thank you, everybody who showed up today. I appreciate it. And like I said, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. If you watch the replay and you want to leave a question later, I will be popping into the group between my meetings today. I will tell you guys if they're going well and answer any questions that you have. Ooh, Andrea has a good question. How many free gigs before you start charging? So this is actually something Jessica mentioned at this brunch that I went to last week about how there's not a lot of support out there for public speakers to learn how to start charging. And that was definitely the case for me. I started doing public speaking because I had a book deal and my book publisher said they wanted me to build my platform and that I needed to get out and do public speaking. So I started speaking in classrooms for free, and then I moved on to Rotary clubs for free. And to be perfectly honest, the first speaking gig I ever got that paid, it was because they offered me money. I didn't even ask. It was a law firm who had heard about my transition from corporate attorney to being in the media, and they contacted me to come speak at their retreat. And they said, you know, we normally pay speakers $1,500. You know, does that cover your speaking fee? And I'm thinking, I don't have a speaking fee, so yeah, I think it covers it. And I was so excited to make $1,500. Now, the sad part of that story is ESPN wouldn't allow me to make money from the speaking engagement, so they made me turn it around, but the law firm was phenomenal. They decided to donate that money to charity in my name, and they even let me pick the charity. So I was on the board of a children's cancer foundation, which I'm actually still on the board of, and they donated to the foundation, so that was awesome and all worked out. But that experience taught me that you can make money from speaking. I just didn't know anyone who did it to ask questions. So after that, I did start charging a speaking fee. You know, I do think you have to do some in the beginning for free. People talk about putting together a demo reel, and so you use those free speaking engagements at schools, Rotary clubs, it sort of depends on what your topic is, to build up your demo reel and to get some video clips that you can use on your website. You can also use if you're pitching yourself to people. I don't think there's a magic number. I do think you have to have done some. I don't know that I know anyone who got paid for their very first speaking gig, unless maybe some of my ESPN colleagues who were already sort of a big deal in the media had that happen to them. I would say, you know, do it until you feel really comfortable. Maybe that's 3 speeches in, maybe that's 5 speeches in. And then I started my fee pretty low. Even though I got that $1,500 one, I think the next time I asked for a speaking fee, I only asked for like $200. Now my speaking fees range anywhere from $1,500 if it's a nonprofit or like a school organization or something that doesn't have a lot of money, all the way up to $10,000. So it totally depends on the group. I'm very flexible. Sometimes it depends how much I have to travel. If it's somewhere I want to go that I've never been, I'm doing a speech this fall for a travel writers group, which again is not like my ideal client, but they offered to pay me, I think they're paying me $2,500 if I remember correctly. Plus, they're going to fly me and my husband to New Orleans and put us up for 5 nights. And I've never been to New Orleans. I've always wanted to go. So I will accept lower speaking fees sometimes if I'm getting to go somewhere I've always wanted to go. I've had people cover my husband's airfare before for him to come with me. It's not something I generally ask for, but I'll mention like, you know, hey, I'm so excited to travel to whatever city it is. I think my husband's going to come with me. And sometimes they just offer to cover his travel. Sometimes they have deals with the airlines or the hotels. And so it's actually easier to get those kind of perks out of them than it is to get more money. And the speaking coach I worked with was really big on, you know, you sort of set what your base fee is going to be, and then you're willing to negotiate, and there's all these different things you can ask for. So maybe if the Dolphins hadn't paid me what I wanted, maybe I could have asked them for a couple of VIP passes for a game that I could have given to a client in Miami. So there's some creative things you can do. And here's my biggest tip. Call your speech a workshop instead of a speech. If you're doing something, especially in corporate America, if you can call it a workshop and it's not just a 1-hour speech, especially if it's got any sort of like hands-on sort of portion to it, they'll pay more money for that. So that's my big secret tip that I give to my clients, is how to structure it like a workshop instead of a speech. As a matter of fact, if you look in the group, I was talking to Rosalind about that this morning. She's actually going in to a company this morning to pitch a workshop, and we talked about what she should charge and the fact that she's doing this hands-on thing. And I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, she might correct me, I think I'm the one who told her to start pitching workshops instead of speeches, because in the corporate world you can get more for a workshop. Andrea says, I had my first speaking gig in October. They found me on social media, kind of shaking in my boots. Congratulations. Yeah, other than the classroom gigs that I pitched myself for in the beginning, most of my speaking engagements have come from social media. I would say 80 or 90%, probably 90% have come from social media and primarily from Twitter and LinkedIn. I actually have a post that's going up soon. I just haven't decided whether I'm putting it up on entrepreneur.com or Fast Company. I've been talking to editors at both places, but it's about things you should have on your LinkedIn profile if you want to be a public speaker, things that allow you to get found essentially in searches. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And maybe I'll do a live on that one day about the things you should have in your LinkedIn profile and just ways to use social media to get more speaking gigs. So I know, Andrea, that wasn't like a perfect explanation of how to start getting paid, but it's honestly just when you feel confident enough in the speaking engagements you've had to start asking for it. And if you're at that point and you're ready and you want to talk about it and you want to talk about rates and like where you should start and that kind of stuff, get in touch. I'd be happy to talk to you about that because I never knew anyone who could help me and I've totally just been winging it. And I know Jessica, who was in here, talks about helping people with that as well. So I'm sure either one of us would be happy to tell you about our experience and give you a little advice. Okay, guys, I have to run to my business meeting, but if you have any more questions, I will pop in the group the rest of the day and answer questions about this. Thank you all for showing up and for giving me so much love. It's starting my day on such a good note, and now I am gonna go kill these meetings, okay? I hope everybody has an awesome Tuesday. Thanks, guys.